Hi, I'm Bill Berger, and commonly known as Bishop Berger at the time. And the Hess family is one of the most wonderful families I've ever known. And I'll just introduce this by telling you that when Kyle came into the area, he became acquainted with me just a little bit. And so when we prayed about a calling for him, since he was anticipated that he would be coming in, I suggested maybe he would make a wonderful young men's president. I think that was the calling. And somebody says, well, I think he's already serving in another stake up in, I think it was Fremont, California. And he was serving, I think, on the High Council. And I said, well, we're going to proceed anyway. He may have two callings for a while, but that's okay. And so that's what happened. And so we got acquainted with Kyle just a little bit that way, and then we found out that he was a wonderful youth man. It was almost unfair to some of the other wards because he had great experience with youth, having been a professional scouter. And so when he came in, he was all excited about his new job and the opportunities ahead of him. And so we were all excited to see him come into the ward. So he turned out to be a wonderful first counselor. We really enjoyed it. I've got to tell you that he and Dave Daly, my second counselor, wrestled around just a little bit. And Kyle always came in with a good joke or two. He had a good Southern accent and made us all laugh. And then he'd take a dive at Dave around the waist and try to tackle him, and they'd go around a little bit and had a great time together. He served as a young men's president for quite a while, as I remember, and became very well acquainted with the young people in his youth calling and did a great job in serving the Lord in that calling. The time has passed very quickly, and the experiences we had with Kyle were numerous. As he served as the first counselor, I remember talking with John Niemela, who was one of the very active members of the ward and had served as an elders quorum president. You know, and he said, when I first moved into the ward, guess who first screeched up to the curb just after we moved in? Right after we moved in, it was Kyle Hess, and he made us feel so welcome into the ward. Kyle was a very spiritual person, and he put family first. I remember walking into his home many times and seeing the pictures of his family on the wall just to the left if you walk through the door. And he revered his family, and so they had a very close-knit family and a great love for his dear wife, Karen, and for his children. That's what it was all about with Kyle, was his family primarily. And then he extended himself to others, and there are so many things in his life that were important, but I'd say his great attribute was his deep spirituality. Let me give you just one example of that. Others have probably shared this as well. One day he came in by himself, pulled a chair up close to my desk, and I was serving then as a bishop, and he wanted to talk to me alone. And this is not all that personal because we're talking about family now, and most of you who are watching this will be family members and close friends. But he said, Bishop, and he had tears in his eyes, he said, I want to share with you a wonderful experience I had. He said, my dad came in to give me a blessing at the hospital. I had done a really stupid thing, and let me tell you about the stupid thing first. I guess they were traveling from Utah or somewhere back to California, and he got on his skateboard to go out and get some milk, and it twirled around and ended up, I think he said he broke his leg in many places, his lower leg. And so he was in great agony with that thing. It was a very painful experience, more than most would be. And he said his dad came in and gave him a blessing. And he said it was a very unusual experience. He said, I was in pain, and my whole body was just racked in pain. He said, all of a sudden it felt like there was a blanket over me. And it just started rolling up from the bottom up. And the parts where it rolled past were just free of pain totally. And by the time that it got completely over me, there was no pain. And that was the end of the pain. So he had great faith. You know, it takes faith by the person receiving the blessing sometimes too. And so that was a great experience that he shared it with me, and I was really pleased and honored that he would do that. And I'm sure he's shared it with Karen and others. It was a wonderful experience that he did. I would say probably he got along well with others, and if we had a large youth group, as we had in my home on occasion, I was very anxious that Kyle would enter the doorway, because he would just, all of a sudden, the spirit was just great when he came in and got along extremely well with others. Kyle had some kind of a special charisma and made him really different than other people. I think that's why he really succeeded in business as well as in the church. People were drawn to him, and he was very quick to smile and laugh with people and joke with them, and so that was something in his personality which was really distinct and different than other people. Well, a good friend will leave you a little different than when you first meet them, and I think all of us in the bishopric became better people because of Kyle, and I know I did personally, because of his spirit, his enthusiasm for service, and so I would say probably that had the greatest effect on me. We had a youth conference in 1979, about March, and it was a routine thing we did every year for the Mission VO stake, to take 150 to 200 kids over on the boat. And Kyle came over, I think, the night before. We had a bunch of kids here getting ready for it, and but just a few days before we went to youth conference, he said he was out behind our home in the glen out here and riding his bicycle, and had someone on the handlebars, I believe. And they took a spill, and he went over the handlebars and bumped his head. And when I saw him, he had kind of a black eye and some darkness on one side of his head in the temple. And I thought that was a terrible spill that he took. But he was raring to go anyway. So off we went to youth conference, and he was a daring sort of a guy and willing to do things with the kids. And so there were a couple of the youth, Kirk Stidham and Randy Knight, went out and rented some gear for diving. And so inasmuch as Kyle had learned diving and was certified, I think in Hawaii, to do the diving, he was really anxious to get out in the water with these two boys. And so not long after we arrived there, they were out in the water and really went out quite a ways, probably several hundred feet. And somehow I think they got separated out there. And I heard someone calling, I think it was Kurt or Randy or both of them, saying, "Bishop, Bishop, come here, hurry, hurry." So I went over to the edge of the water, and they had Kyle on the edge of the water, and they said, "He's not breathing," and he had part of his body was still in the water, his legs, and so we went right to work with a CPR, in as much as I was certified in CPR. And Brother Evans, I think, Leon Evans, was going to assist me, and I asked him if he had training in CPR, and he said no, but he was willing to do whatever. And then I went to Stan Kimball, Sr., and I saw him there, and I said, "Stan, you're trained in CPR?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Will you do the mouth-to-mouth part?" And he said, "Yes." And so we did the CPR, and it went on and on and on and I was saying in my mind, Kyle, come on, I know you can get out of this. And so we were trying to bring the blood around in the body, and so that he looked good again. There was no breathing, and so we continued that for an hour and 45 minutes. During that time, a couple of boats came. One boat came over, and some of the people who were familiar with the emergency medicine came over. We got him in the boat and continued the CPR all the way over to where they had the hospital there. And when we entered the hospital, they hooked up the gear and said, straight line, he's not going to make it. And they just, at that time, said it's too late. There's nothing we can do. And so we knew that Kyle was in the spirit world at that point. There was nothing else we could do. So I thought, now what about the youth conference? And so we got a call from President Draney, who was the stake president, and he said, Bishop Berger, what should we do? Do you want to continue with the youth conference? So he was ready to call it off when he found out. And I said, I think the youth conference should go on. I think that's what Kyle would want to have done. And so the youth conference continued, and then I went into the office there, and the police there said, would you, we normally have the police notify. And I said, I would really personally like to make this notification if you can arrange it. So they arranged for me to get on a helicopter. I still had all my wet clothes on. And rather than change clothes, I went directly to Sharon's porch, and she came to the door. I couldn't say anything. And Karen just said a couple of words. She said, it's Kyle, isn't it? And I said, yeah. And it was about 45 minutes before Karen could even speak. And then I said, let me talk to you first, Karen. And we spent some time together alone, and the kids went in the other room. And she had 4 children then at the time, and Cammie was yet to come. And she was pregnant with Cammie. So after talking at length with Karen, and she says, I think we can go in the other room now. So we went in the other room and explained what had happened, and what, gave some counsel to the family as to what, they should be thinking about and doing, and so on. They were all very, very solemn and very hurt, but willing to do whatever the Lord would want them to do, and stay together as a family and work together as a family through this difficult time. So then, it's just an interesting side note to that. I wanted to find out what was next, and so I called Los Angeles and talked to the assistant coroner there, and he says, we're going to have an inquest, which is normal. They always have to eliminate foul play when someone is, lost his life in that way. And he said, we know the history and everything, and he said, I think it could well be related maybe to the blow on the head before. But when the final report came out, they said the final words were on the certificate, just heavy lungs, basically drowning. And so they didn't relate it to anything that happened here with the bicycle accident. And so then after that, that was cleared up, and I think Kurt and Randy attended that event in Los Angeles when they went through that. A difficult thing for those 2 wonderful boys. They found nothing wrong with the equipment, and there was still oxygen in the tank. So everything in regards to the tank was okay. The boys had picked up some of their equipment was not the right weight for the weights he put on and so on, but it was a little on the heavy side. But they didn't blame that. They didn't blame that on anybody, and it appears that, something happened there where he just got separated, I think, and who knows. But so I really want to, since we're into that, I should tell you about the service, because the service was so extremely touching. And all of the youth in the whole stake were very, very into this. I mean, very much into it, because they were at the conference. And so we held it in the Los Alisos building, that service. And I was just overwhelmed the way the youth were dressed. They had all the boys in white shirts on one side and the girls on the other side of the chapel. And then I remember it was very difficult to walk up to the front and just think about what was, conducting a service for one of your best friends, a counselor. And there were, and all these youth, that was the really overwhelming feeling, and the spirit was there. And I'm sure Kyle was, possibly there too. I just had the feeling of that. And so it was a very uplifting experience for all of the youth. I think the youth grew through that experience spiritually. It was a wonderful experience for them. But I'm grateful for the way they handled themselves. But the words that were spoken were wonderful words of praise for Kyle and for how well he did in the stake, and then with the youth, and the wonderful person that he is. And so that's basically that episode. And then and it's almost a legacy since that time in the wards in the stake. And I have to say, because it's so closely attached to that, how Karen has been an example to the stake in so many ways over the years since that time. Everybody wants to be like Karen, because she's one who, after a difficult situation, is able to come back stronger and be a better example, where other people could become very down and very embittered and go the opposite direction. It turns out that she was a very strong lady, and set that example for everyone. I think in coming back, to notify Karen, first of all, I felt driven to be the one to do that, because I was very close to Karen and to the family and to Kyle. And so I didn't really want the police department to show up on the door. And so I thought that it would be appropriate for the bishop to come to the door. I knew that I had that old coat on. It was all wet, and I didn't come home to change. What do? Come home, take time to dress up and go back? No, you just take the moment as it comes. And besides that, I was kind of numb about the whole thing by that time. It had been, that was a very different kind of an experience for everybody. And so it was just the feeling that here I was, and here's a dear person, and what are you going to say? And as it turns out, you don't have to say anything. I was home earlier than the conference, and I probably looked wiped out. And here's Karen looking at me and thinking, something is really amiss. And so all she had to do is say, "It's Kyle, isn't it?" And that was it. Yeah. Well, Karen, you're probably one of the most outstanding people I've ever known. And others feel the same way. And you're kind of one of those pure in heart mothers in Zion who continues on in spite of everything to make yourself so available to your children and see that they grow and develop the way they should and stay with it during all the hard times. It's just amazing to me that you're able to do all that. And then in the stake, so many people have called on you as the one to give those very difficult talks in the stake and in the ward, and people would look forward to hearing from you, because you were always able to memorize so much and know your material so well, and it came from the heart. So we learned a lot. I learned a lot from watching you and hearing your presentations in gospel doctrine and other places. and your experience in the Relief Society where you served so well as president and other callings. I think all of us respect you and would like to be more like you. So I don't know. The Lord has certainly been with you, and the Spirit to give you that strength and that comfort. That's probably the greatest example I know of someone who's fortified and strengthened by the Spirit and able to use the Spirit in your presentations. Now, people would be mortified to do some of the tasks you've done in your callings and in your assignments in your talks, and yet you were able to handle that extremely well. So I have a deep respect for you personally, and thank you. It's an honor to know you and to learn from you and to feel of your example and your spirit.
Okay, I didn't want this moment to pass without my putting a little 2 cents in. And I think, boy, the Hesses are such a remarkable family, and I will always hold Karen in the highest esteem. She's a wonderful woman. I mean, she has amazing strength after all these years that she's been able to provide for all you kids and be such a wonderful person. She's always sought after for any lesson in the stake or ward that needs to be given because of her zeal and her enthusiasm. And think of all those piano students over the years that have gained so much from her talents. And so I just wish them the best, and I hope we will always stay close because you are an outstanding family. Oh, it was such a tragic thing. It's something you never witnessed personally. But of course, as a mom, you think, what if it were my husband? He was there too. Or how would I manage with a family, you know, with no dad? It just almost beyond words. I tried to as much as I could. She had 4 children going on 5, and I had just had my 8th child, Tiffany. In fact, that was Tiffany's year-old birthday. So moms are awfully busy, but our thoughts are always with her, and really had a lot of empathy for her. Yeah, Bill started when we moved from Anaheim. We moved straight here, so we've been here for like over 30 years, 30 and a half actually, in this same house. And so we met them when they first moved in and been friends ever since.
Good.
She's my role model. I'd like to be like her. I try to be like her.